Social media
Sometimes the biggest
repost wasn't the
controversies
main
in
cause
sports
of the
don't
recent
start on the
outrage.
court. They don't
Because of the
begin with a
history
bad
involved,
call, a heated
it felt
post-game
intimate to
interview,
many
or a
admirers.
rivalry reignited.
They weren't staring at an article being
Sometimes all it
shared
takes
by
is
a
a single
random
click,
executive.
one
They were
quiet
staring
moment
at the woman
online
who had
to
selected
set off a
Clark to
firestorm
represent
that
the
spreads
franchise,
faster than anyone could
posing
have
queries that
anticipated.
no one in the company
That's
appeared
exactly
ready
what
to
happened
respond
this week
to.
in the world
An
of
article
Indiana
claiming
Fever
that
basketball.
coaching Caitlin
And
Clark
if you've
is the
been
most
following
difficult job in
WNBA
the WNBA,
updates, you know we
went
don't shy
viral
away from
online,
breaking down exactly
sparking
what went
the uproar.
down and why it
The
matters.
story wasn't
This
out of
week,
the ordinary
Fever
on its
fans
own.
found themselves
For
in the
over
middle of a
2
controversy
years,
that had nothing
Clark
to
has
do with the
dominated
box score.
discussions about basketball.
No trade rumors.
Fans,
No injury
experts,
reports.
and detractors
Just a
analyze
repost on
every
social
game,
media that
every
sent
error,
shockwaves through
every
one of the
win,
most passionate
and every
fan
headline
communities in
surrounding
women's
her.
basketball
In the
today.
never-ending cycle of
It
sports
began with an
discourse,
opinion piece.
another opinion
The
post
article in
criticizing
question
elements
carried a
of the
headline
game
that immediately
would
caught
typically
people's
vanish.
attention.
However,
Coaching
this was a
Caitlin Clark,
unique
it argued,
circumstance.
is currently the
The
most
content of the
demanding
story
job in the
did not
entire
lead it to go viral.
WNBA.
Whoever
On the
decided to
surface,
share it
that's
caused
not
it
the
to
most
blow up.
outrageous claim
One of the
anyone
most
has ever
revered
made.
people in Indiana
Clark
Fever
has been the
history,
center of
Lin
basketball
Dunn,
conversation for over
reposted
2
the article,
years running.
as fans soon discovered.
Every game she plays,
this wasn't
every
just
mistake
any
she
basketball
makes,
fan.
every milestone
This
she
was
reaches,
not a
it all
contentious
gets
radio
analyzed,
personality
debated,
seeking
praised,
publicity.
and criticized
This
in
Hall
real
of Famer
time.
was the executive
Coaches,
who chose
analysts,
Caitlin Clark
fans,
with the
and
first
critics all
overall
have
pick,
something to say
helped
about her.
establish the
Another
Fever
opinion
organization,
column entering
and was
that
regarded by
conversation
many
wouldn't normally
fans
be a
as
major
one of
event.
Clark's most
The
ardent
article itself
advocates
laid
within
out
the
a
team.
reasonable enough
Screenshots
argument.
started circulating on
It
social
pointed to the
media
extraordinary
almost
pressure
instantly.
surrounding Clark's presence in
Confusion
Indiana,
over the story
the media
itself
scrutiny,
was
the
not the
heightened
response.
expectations,
Fans,
the way every
however,
coaching decision gets
concentrated
put
on
under
a
a
much more
microscope simply
significant
because
issue.
she's on the roster.
Why would someone in
From
Lin
that
Dunn's
angle,
position decide
saying
to
that
promote a
head
story
coach
that
Stephanie
many
White
readers
has one of the
perceived
toughest
as
jobs in the league
disparaging
isn't
of the
exactly
biggest performer in the
controversial?
franchise?
The numbers
The
back it
issue
up.
became even more heated
Attendance
due
records,
to the timing.
television ratings,
Discussions
and media
on Caitlin
coverage across
Clark's
the
treatment
WNBA
within
have all
and
shifted
outside the
dramatically
company
since
have
Clark
been
arrived.
intensifying for
The
weeks.
spotlight is undeniable.
Tension had already
But
been
as
raised
readers
by
dug deeper
disagreements
into the
over
piece,
media
something
criticism,
shifted.
concerns about
Certain
internal
sections of
support
the article
and
pointed to
dissatisfaction among
Indiana's
some
defensive
fans.
struggles,
Then this
specifically
repost
referencing a
surfaced,
loss to
and
Portland.
all of a sudden it was
Other
impossible to
passages
dismiss
suggested
those
that Clark's
worries.
presence
The
itself was
relationship
creating
at play added
complications
to
for
the
the coaching
situation's
staff.
emotional impact.
For a portion
This
of
was
the
more
fan
than
base, the
just a
framing
dispute
crossed a
between an
line.
executive
It
and a
felt
player.
less like an
Lin
examination
Dunn
of
was
coaching
seen by many
challenges
fans
and more
as a
like
symbol
placing
of
blame for
something
the
much
team's
more
difficulties
profound.
directly at
She
Clark's
played a
feet.
role in
That
Clark's
reaction
initial,
alone might have
sometimes a
generated a
rival
few
fan
hours
base,
of debate
a
online
reporter,
before
or
fading into
even
the
an
background.
opponent doesn't
Opinion
start the biggest
pieces come and
dispute.
go.
Sometimes
That's
it
just
all
the nature of
begins
the
with a
sports
single
media
click
cycle.
from an unexpected
What happened
source.
next, though, was something
That's
else entirely.
just what transpired with Caitlin
Within a short
Clark
window
this
of
week.
time,
In a matter
screenshots
of
began
hours,
circulating
Fever
across social
supporters
media.
the damage
People
had
had noticed
already been
something
done.
unexpected.
Regardless
Lin Dunn's
of
account
whether
had
the
reshared the
repost was
article.
deliberate,
Let that sink
misinterpreted,
in for a moment.
or something
Because
else
if you don't know
entirely.
who Lin Dunn is,
A newspaper
you need to
column
understand
was
just
no
how
longer being
significant her
debated
name
by
is in
fans.
Indiana Fever
They were
history
arguing
before
over
you can
allegiance.
grasp why this
They were
repost
arguing
hit so
over
differently
support.
than anything
They
a
were
random
also
reporter
arguing over
or
whether
radio
or not
personality
the
might
most
have shared.
significant player in women's
Lin
basketball
Dunn is not
was
a
actually
casual
being
observer
shielded
of
by those
Indiana
around
Fever
her.
basketball.
What transpired
She is one of the
next
people
would
most
transform a
responsible for
straightforward
building what the
social media
franchise is
repost
today.
into one of the most
Her
talked about
connection to
topics
Indiana
related to the
basketball
Fever
spans
throughout the
decades.
season. It was
As a
not
head coach,
intended for the
she
piece to become
transformed the
a
Fever
big
from a
story.
struggling team
Opinion
into a
pieces are
genuine
common
contender.
in today's sports media,
Under her leadership,
particularly
Indiana
when
captured
Caitlin
the
Clark
only
is the topic.
WNBA championship
Some
in
people applaud
franchise
her,
history,
some condemn her,
a title that
and some
permanently
attempt to
cemented her
explain
legacy
why
as a
she is
Fever legend
always in the
and earned her a
spotlight.
place in the Basketball
Before they
Hall of
vanished
Fame.
into the following news
Even
cycle,
after her coaching
the
days
majority
ended,
of them sparked
Dunn remained
discussion for a
deeply
few
tied
hours.
to the organization.
This one appeared to be
When the
headed in the
franchise
same
needed to
direction.
reset and find a new
According to
direction
the article,
after years of
coaching
inconsistency,
Caitlin Clark is
she
currently the
returned to
most
help guide
difficult job in
basketball
the
operations
WNBA.
at one of the most
A
pivotal
portion of the
moments
piece
in
highlighted
team history.
how much thought Clark puts into
And then
each
came
game,
the 2024
lineup selection,
WNBA
and
draft.
coaching decision.
With the first
It
overall
implied that
pick,
there is
the
pressure
Indiana
unlike
Fever had a choice
anything
that
most
wasn't really a
coaches
choice
have
at all.
ever encountered when
Caitlin
handling
Clark
the
had rewritten the record
expectations
books in
surrounding the
college
league's biggest
basketball.
star.
She had
That
sold
argument
out
by
arenas,
itself
broken
wasn't very
television
contentious
viewership records,
to many
and brought a
readers.
level of
The
national
league's
attention to
attendance
women's
statistics,
basketball
TV
that the sport
ratings,
had
and
rarely
media
seen
coverage
before.
have all
Selecting
changed
her
as
was
a
a
result
no-brainer,
of Clark's
but it was
popularity.
Lin Dunn who
There
made
is
it
no
official.
denying the spotlight.
She is the executive
However,
who
as
called
the
Clark's
article
name.
progressed,
She is the
some
person
fans
who brought
observed,
Caitlin Clark to
warning that
Indiana.
they felt placed
That
the blame
history is
for current
everything.
difficulties
It's the reason
squarely
why
on
a single
Clark.
repost
In
didn't just
one
spark
section,
a debate about an opinion
defensive
article.
shortcomings
It sparked
during
a debate
Indiana's
about
defeat
loyalty,
by
trust,
Portland were
and what the
highlighted.
organization
Another
truly
said
thinks of
that
its
head coach
franchise
Steph Stephanie White faces
The moment those
particular
screenshots
difficulties
started
as a
spreading,
result
the
of Clark's
conversation
presence.
shifted completely.
Some readers perceived the
Basketball
essay
strategy
more
was
as a
out the
claim that
window.
Clark had contributed to
This
the
wasn't
issue
about defensive
than as an
rotations or
examination of
lineup
coaching.
decisions anymore.
The repost
It was
followed.
about perception. It
Screenshots
was about
from Lin
allegiance.
Dunn's account started
Fever
making the
supporters weren't
rounds on
simply
social
reacting to
media
an
within
executive
minutes.
sharing an
The
article
writer
they
was
disagreed
no
with.
longer being discussed
They were
by
reacting
fans.
to the woman who chose
Clark would be
Caitlin
shared
Clark,
by
who
someone
helped bring her
so
to
close to
Indiana
her.
and
Some
publicly
defended
championed her
Dunn,
through some of the most
speculating that
difficult
she
moments
might
of her
have
rookie
only
season,
agreed with parts of the
seemingly
article or that
amplifying a
she just
narrative
wanted to
that
draw
painted Clark
attention
as
to
a
the
problem.
difficulties that the coaching
Because
staff
here's
faces.
the thing. Throughout
However,
Clark's first
since
year in
there
the
was
league,
no
Lin Dunn was
justification
one of her
for the
most
repost,
visible public
conjecture
defenders.
swiftly
When Clark
filled the
arrived in the
void.
WNBA,
Additionally,
she didn't
online
exactly get a
conjecture
gentle
seldom
welcome.
stays under
Opposing
control
defenses
once it
targeted
begins.
her. Physical
Thousands
play
of
against
people
her
responded
became a
to
weekly
posts that
storyline.
questioned the organization's
Television
support
panels
for Clark.
debated whether she was
The
being treated
repost,
fairly.
according to some
Social
fans,
media turned
conveyed
every
the
hard
incorrect
foul into a
message at
national
the worst
conversation.
possible moment.
There were
Others said
stretches
the
where it felt
repost
like the
fit within
scrutiny
a broader
surrounding
pattern
Clark was
and cited
accelerating
recent
faster
concerns
than even she
surrounding the
could keep up
Fever's
with.
media portrayal.
During those
The
stretches, a
story
lot
was
of people
beginning
in
to
the
take
basketball
shape,
world
fair
went quiet.
or unfair.
Some chose
The
to stay
fact
neutral.
that the article's
Some
actual
ignored the
content
noise
practically
entirely.
became incidental
Dunn was different.
what made the
She stepped
situation
forward and
particularly
addressed the
intriguing.
physical treatment Clark
Basketball
was facing on the
no
court.
longer the main topic of
Her
discussion.
words were direct
It
and
had nothing to
unmistakable.
do with
There's a
coaching
difference
choices
between
or
tough,
defensive
competitive
rotations.
basketball and conduct
It had
that
to do
crosses
with
a line,
perception.
and that line was
Fans
being
wanted to
crossed.
know if one of
She made
Clark's
her
most
position
significant
crystal clear.
supporters still
It
thought
needed
the
to
same
stop.
of her.
For Clark's
Because it
supporters,
sports
those
when a
statements
random
meant a great
columnist
deal.
disparages
It wasn't a
Caitlin
fan
Clark.
or a media personality
However,
speaking up.
people start asking
It was a Hall of
completely
Fame
different
executive
questions
from within
if
the
someone
organization,
from within the
someone
company
with decades
seems
of
to amplify
experience,
that criticism.
publicly validating what
And
many
if you
fans
comprehend
believed
Lin
they were
Dunn's
watching.
identity and the significance
Dunn was
of
willing
her
to stand in
relationship
front of
with
the
Caitlin
criticism
Clark,
and push back
those
when Clark
questions
needed
become
someone in her corner
even
the
more
most.
complex.
That's the
You must
standard Dunn
comprehend
set.
one basic
That's the
fact
version
in
of
order
Lin
to
Dunn that
comprehend
Fever
why
fans
this
had come to
controversy
know and
affected
trust.
Fever fans
So when the
in
repost
such different
surfaced,
ways.
with no
Lin Dunn
explanation,
isn't
no
simply
additional
another
comment,
executive
no
sitting in an
context,
office.
the
She
silence
is one of
surrounding
the
it
most
became
important
deafening.
personalities in the
In
entire
today's
history
sports
of the
media
Indiana
landscape,
Fever.
when someone
Long
in a
before
prominent
Caitlin
organizational
Clark ever
role
walked
shares
onto a
content
WNBA
publicly,
court,
fans don't
Dunn
tend to
was
assume it
helping
was
define the
accidental.
franchise itself.
They look for meaning.
She has been
They look for
associated to
signals.
Indiana basketball
And when
for
someone
decades,
with Dunn's
earning
standing in
respect
history
throughout the
shares an
sport as a
article that many
coach,
readers interpreted as
executive,
critical
and
of the
architect of
franchise's
winning
biggest
teams.
star,
Her
people
background
naturally
speaks
started
for
asking
itself.
questions that
Yet
went
her
far
influence
beyond the
on
article
Fever
itself.
supporters goes beyond accolades
Was this repost a
and
reflection of
successes.
how some within the
She
organization
assimilated
viewed
into
Clark?
the group's identity.
Was it a show of support for the
Expectations
coaching
were
staff
high
at Clark's
when
expense?
Dunn became the
Or was it
Fever's
something far
new
more
head
innocent?
coach.
Perhaps
What
agreement with
followed
only
was one
one
of the
portion
most
of the
successful
piece,
times
or simply
in
an attempt to
franchise
highlight the
history.
unique
Under her
pressures the
leadership,
coaching staff is
Indiana
managing.
emerged into
Nobody
a
knew
serious
because
contender,
no clarification
eventually
came.
claiming the
And in the
only
absence of an
WNBA
explanation,
championship the
speculation
team
filled
has
every
ever
available
won.
space.
That title sealed her
Posts
place
questioning
as a
what the
Fever
repost
legend.
meant racked up
Years
thousands of
later,
responses.
even after walking
Fans who
away
had
from
spent
coaching,
months defending the
Dunn
organization
stayed
against
profoundly
outside
attached to the
criticism
organization.
suddenly found
She
themselves
returned to
questioning
help
what was
supervise
happening on the
basketball
inside.
operations during
Some
a critical
argued the
juncture
repost
for the
sent
franchise.
entirely the wrong
The
message
Fever
at
was
entirely
searching
the
for a
wrong
fresh
moment,
direction,
coming at a
hoping
time
to
when
regroup
discussions
after
about how
years
Clark is
of
treated within and
inconsistency.
around the
They
franchise
required
had already
leadership,
been building for
stability,
weeks.
and experience.
Others pointed
That's
to
where
broader
Dunn came
patterns
in.
they felt they'd
The
been
choice
noticing in
Indiana
how
had
the
to make
Fever's
after
media
winning the
presence had
top
been
overall
managed.
pick in the
The repost,
2024
for those
WNBA
fans,
draft
wasn't an
wasn't too
isolated
difficult.
moment.
One of the
It felt
biggest
like a
stars
piece of a
in
larger
collegiate
puzzle they were
basketball
only
history
beginning to put
was
together.
Caitlin Clark.
Here's
Her
what
fame
separated this
went much
situation
beyond
from your average
athletics.
sports controversy.
She was selling out venues,
The article's actual
attracting
content
record
became
television
almost
viewership,
irrelevant.
and elevating women's
The debate
basketball
wasn't really
to a
about
level
coaching
never seen
challenges
before.
or whether Stephanie
However,
White has a
the
difficult
decision
job.
had to be
Most
formally
people would
made by
readily
someone.
agree she does.
Lin Dunn
The
was
debate
that
was about
individual.
something much more personal
It
to
wasn't
the
just
fan
another
base.
draft pick
Fever
when
supporters
Clark's
have
name was
watched Clark
called
carry an
first overall.
extraordinary weight
For the
since the moment she
franchise,
stepped into
it
the
marked
league.
a sea change.
They've watched her absorb
the Fever weren't
criticism
just
that
bringing
players
in a
before her
gifted
never
player.
faced at the same
They were placing
scale.
a wager
They've
on a
watched her handle
generational
that
talent
weight with
who could
professionalism while working
revolutionized
to
the
earn her
team
place
on
at the
and off the
professional
court.
level.
And Dunn
And
seemed
through
to
all
be
of it, they've
totally
taken comfort
dedicated
in knowing
to
that
that goal
certain
right
people
from
within
the
the
start.
organization,
She
Lin Dunn
publicly
among them, were
commended
firmly
Clark's
in her corner.
aptitude, drive,
That comfort
and
was shaken
promise.
this week.
During team
When a random
activities,
columnist writes something
practices,
critical
and
about
training
Caitlin
camp,
Clark,
fans
fans push
witnessed the
back,
two
maybe debate
conversing.
it for a day and move
Beyond
on.
the typical
It's
player-executive
sports. Critics
relationship,
exist.
there was a clear
Opinions
sense
flow.
of ease
That's
between
the
them.
game.
Observing the next
But when
phase
someone
of
who
Fever
helped build the
basketball,
Fever, who
Dunn
selected
frequently
Clark
appeared
first
more
overall,
like a proud
and who stood
mentor
up for her
than a
publicly
remote
during her
front
most
office
scrutinized
person.
moments,
As
appears
Clark's
to
rookie
amplify
season
criticism
went
of
on,
her.
that
Even
impression
indirectly,
grew stronger.
even without a word
Dunn
of
was
commentary,
frequently seen
fans
as one of the
don't move on
voices
as
urging
quickly.
patience
They
whenever
start asking
conversations
much harder
arose over
questions.
Clark's
The
transition
emotional
to the
weight of
professional
this
game.
situation came
Many fans
directly
thought
from the
Dunn knew more
relationship
than
involved.
anyone how much pressure the young
This
star
wasn't a
was
distant
under
front
when
office
violent
figure
play
sharing
against Clark
content from
became a
behind a
talking
desk
point
nobody
throughout the
sees.
league.
This
She was the
Lin
one
Dunn,
who had brought her to
a
Indiana.
name that carries
after
enormous
all.
meaning in Indiana.
Because of this,
a person whose
singer was
bond
brought
with
to
Clark
Indiana
fans
by
had
this
watched
woman.
develop in public
Many
over more
followers
than a year.
believed that she will
A
always
person
be
who,
one of
to
her
many
most ardent
observers,
supporters.
looked less like a
That's
detached
precisely
executive
why some
and
fans
more
find
like
it
a proud
so
mentor
hard to
watching something
reconcile
remarkable
what transpired
unfold.
subsequently.
At this
Because
point,
Lin
the
Dunn used
situation
to be one of
remains
the most
unresolved
vocal
in the sense that
advocates
no
for
clear
Caitlin Clark in
explanation for the
public,
repost
in
has been
addition
offered
to
publicly.
providing
What's been
behind-the-scenes
resolved,
support.
at
There
least
is
in the
a
court of
very
fan
clear
opinion,
record of
is
Lin
that the
Dunn
moment
defending
landed
Caitlin
hard
Clark
and
when
left a
she
mark.
most needed help,
Whether the
which
repost
is
was
why
intentional,
many Fever
whether it
fans
was
find this whole
misinterpreted,
situation
or whether it simply
so hard
represented
to
a more
comprehend.
complicated
If you go back
organizational
to Clark's
picture than
rookie
fans had
campaign,
assumed,
Dunn
one
wasn't
thing
just
is certain:
encouraging.
the damage
She was
to the
one of the
perception of unity
organization's
around
most
Caitlin Clark
powerful
was
public
real.
advocates. The
Once those screenshots
WNBA's
started
initial
moving,
months
the
were anything
conversation
but
was no
simple.
longer controllable.
There appeared to be a
Fever
new
fans aren't
scandal
asking
after
about
every
basketball
game.
right now.
Clark had
They're asking
unheard of
about trust.
expectations
They're
when she
asking
joined
whether
the
the
league,
people who were there at the
and
beginning,
she quickly
who made
became
the call
talk
to
of
build
the town.
around Clark,
She
who
was the
defended her
target
when the
of
league was
opposing
still
defenses.
figuring out how to handle
Physical
her
play
presence,
evolved into
are
a
still
weekly
fully
narrative.
invested in what she
Panels on
represents for this
television
franchise
discussed whether
and for
or
women's
not she was being
basketball as a
treated
whole.
fairly by veterans.
Those are the kinds
Every
of
hard
questions that
chicken
don't get
became a
answered by a
national
box
conversation
score.
thanks
They
to
get
social
answered over
media.
time,
There were
through
moments
actions,
when it
through
seemed like the
consistency,
attention
and through
surrounding
moments
Clark was
that either
expanding.
rebuild
The
trust or
damage had
deepen
already
doubt.
been done.
That's the full
Regardless
breakdown
of
of
whether
what's
the
been
repost
unfolding
was
around the
deliberate,
Indiana Fever this week
misinterpreted,
here on
or something else
WNBA
entirely.
Updates.
A
This is
newspaper
exactly the
column
kind of
was no
story that
longer being
reminds us
debated by
sports
fans.
is never just about
They were
what happens
arguing
between
over
the lines.
allegiance. They were arguing
about
over
relationships,
support. They were
expectations,
also
and the
arguing
stories
over whether
fans tell
or
themselves
not the
about the
most
people they
significant
believe
player
in.
in women's
Stay
basketball
locked
was
in with
actually being shielded
WNBA
by those
updates
around
as
her.
this situation
What
continues to
transpired
develop.
next would
Drop your
transform a
thoughts in the
straightforward
comments.
social media
Where do you stand
repost
on this
into
one?
one of the most
And if
talked
you
about
haven't already,
topics
hit
related to the
subscribe
Fever
so you never
throughout
miss
the
a
season.
breakdown when
It was
moments
not
like this
intended
shake
for the
up the
piece
league.
to become a
We'll be
big
right
story.
here watching.
Opinion pieces are
If you
common
enjoyed
in
this
today's
video,
sports media,
hit that subscribe
particularly
button
when
and drop a
Caitlin
comment
Clark
below.
is the
I
topic.
read every single
Some
one.
people applaud her, some